What's happening, guys? Happy Tuesday or Wednesday if you're listening to the podcast, and welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast presented to you by the DWZ Fantasy Football Network and Manscaped.com. And let me introduce my co-host. You know him as the man of the hour and the man with the power, Jerry Sinclair. What's up, buddy? How was week 2 for you?
It was okay. A lot of the teams that I had rebuilding are 0-2, so that's good. That's going as planned. I got a couple 2-0 teams. It's a good mix. I got nothing crazy. A few. I think I have one shocker that I thought it was going to be a good team, and it's 0-2. And I had Watson. I paired Watson with a lot of Tua, just thinking I'll just ride Tua out until I can, and if Watson plays, Watson plays. Well, that's not looking great right now. So those are going to the quick rebuild, but nothing crazy. It's been fun. Nobody's gotten seriously injured, knock on wood.
Well, we'll get into all that in the body of the show, but I'm super excited because we've been bringing on more guests, and this is one of my absolute favorites. We're going to talk about this in Good People, Bad Tweets, but this is more than a guest. This is a friend of ours, a friend of the show. It's Shane Hallam. You can find him on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. Hallam is spelled Hallam. He is the managing partner of Draft Countdown. He is all sorts of everything and the co-host of the Devy Marketplace podcast with our good buddy Kane Fassell. And he is a ranker over at Fanball, and he is still contributing at the Steel City Insider. Mr. Shane Hallam, welcome back to the show, my friend.
It's a pleasure. It's always fun to cut it up with Memphis and Jerry here, and I'm happy to be back and really excited. I've definitely been busy on Draft Countdown. We've relaunched the site. Myself and Brian Bassarge, the other managing partner, it's a NFL draft site that's been around since 1997. Scott Wright, who gave me my start, started it. So we're happy to kind of take it back over, give more NFL draft holistic, every position content. And, we have our own podcast there as well, the Draft Countdown podcast. So some you can look up if that's what you're into, if you're listening to this. But yeah, if you're into the NFL draft, I have a ton of content over there now. I have all my rankings for 2022, 2023, and 2024. All those drafts. You can look to the future a bit. I also have a 7-round mock draft for 2022 if you want to see where guys are going to go. I have a 7-round mock draft for 2023 and a 3-round mock draft for 2024. So I'm just trying to pump it out. And, I always say I may not know everything or be the most knowledgeable, but I can,
Shut up. You're a psychopath. Out of all the things you just said, you're a psychopath.
I can have.
I might not know everything, but I have mock drafts for 2032. Like this guy, man.
He is out there, and it's kind of like the products that we endorse here on the Dynasty WarZone. I never recommend anybody whose work I don't truly use or believe in. This is the same guy. If you're new to the show, we have a lot of new listeners to the Dynasty WarZone. When I talk Devy, when I talk Campus to Canton, when I talk anything college football related, I'm always going to mention Shane Hallam. He's going to be mentioned right along with the likes of Ray Garvin, Nick Whalen, his co-host on the Devy Marketplace, Kane Fassell. It's a great podcast with a great patron group, by the way. And he is one of my legit go-tos. He is the guy who, and I have the receipts. If you want them, at me on Twitter, at DWZ Memphis, I will send us. He was the first person. If you can find one that predates March of 2019, he was the first person to identify James Robinson. This guy is in it to win it. He is a great mind. So, Shane, thank you for coming back.
Let me add one more thing. I take notes every time we do a podcast. The last time we had you on, because you hit James Robinson, which I loved every second of that and exploited it to the fullest. But the next season, you said, we asked the same question. Who's this late round guy? You hit James Robinson. Who's it going to be? You know who he said? Elijah Mitchell. Just saying. I mean, that's a pretty good hit rate. Just saying.
I've got to get the drop of the guy from Game of Thrones. Never seen an episode, but I do know the famous saying, I drink and know things. Shane. So here's what I got for Shane. Shane, this is the best I got, buddy.
I'll take it.
We'll give you a rousing round of applause real quick before we get into the body of the show. First guest to do Good People, Bad Tweets with us. The YouTube channel. Every Sunday we've been doing football Sunday school, answering trade questions, start sits. Been having a lot of fun. It's been me and Jesse and Kyle. At some point, Jerry might be able to pop by. We've been doing prop bet videos on YouTube. Kyle's been doing his waiver wire sniping video, getting you a week ahead of being a week ahead. So go over to YouTube, search Dynasty Warzone, find the show, subscribe, stop by on Sunday, come to Football Sunday School, and get blessed. So here we go, Jerry. It's everyone's favorite segment. It's the new infamous favorite segment. And this is Good People, Bad Tweets. And I think I'm reaching this week with Good People, but here goes. This is at Dan Clark Sports. And Dan says, this is a long one. This is a three-parter. This is a thread, but I'm going to give it all to you. I have always charged $50 to $100 per podcast guest appearance, as I spend at least an hour prepping, followed by 20 to 35 minutes of discussion. I also promote the appearance both pre and post recording to help grow their following. Yesterday, a guy asked me onto his podcast, and I explained my fees. He responded with, fuck off. I guess my question is, do people just expect shit for free nowadays? Why would I invest 2+ hours of my time and not be remunerated for it? It's a great word. I don't even know that one. I mean, we know trepidatious. We don't know remunerated. His response was disgusting and highlighted to me why some podcast appearances just aren't worth the cash. What a rude asshole. No wonder he has a small following. With an attitude like that, he will never grow into anything, something successful. Jerk. So Shane, as a guy who is our guest, I don't have $50 for you, but as a guy who does a lot of podcast spots, you can find Shane. Kane's his partner. You can find Shane in a lot of different spots, doing a lot of What was your thought? Because I know you saw this. We talked about it before the show.
Yeah, I was pretty blown away. Like, if you do an hour of research to be a guest on a podcast, you're probably not doing whatever work you're doing originally. Like they're not going to ask you about something brand new. You know, you should probably know what you're talking about. So like that threw me off. Like, man, you know, what hour? You know, I'm sorry, Memphis. I did not spend an hour before the show thinking, what is Memphis going to ask me? Right? Like let me research all the different ways. You know, that just doesn't happen. And then, does this not help you? Like, doesn't this just help everyone? When I do guest spots, I enjoy the people whose shows I go on. I try to do as many as I can, even, you know, people I haven't heard of or smaller, like kind of, if they get bigger, that's good for me. That's good for them, right? It's good for all of us. If there's more people into Dynasty, like that's good for more people into Devi. It's good for everybody. Like why don't you just want to grow the whole industry and everyone gets help that way? And you'll, if you're money focused, then you'll make more money. Like, I don't know. I was just, I've never even considered that in my life, that is even a possibility.
I will tell you, every guest appearance that I've ever been asked to make on any podcast, the answer is always yes. Sometimes it's yes, but what nights are you doing it? Because in season, I'm doing 2 nights a week, and at some point, I have to record our Patreon podcast. You know, it's due every week. You know, that's part of the commitment of having a Patreon. But the answer is always yes. I don't care if you have 1 listener or 100,000. I'm just going to come on and talk ball with you. The same thing. I just want a show sheet. If you give me a show sheet with some bullet points, so I'm somewhat prepared, I'm always in. I was flabbergasted by this. Jerry, what was your take on old Dan's tweet? Because you sent it to me like I didn't see it. The thing literally, like this guy's averaged retweet and tweet counts like 5 to 15. He's a baseball guy. But this thing got over 2,000 retweets. A lot of quotes. Jerry, what was your thought?
Well, I thought fuck off was the perfect response to this guy, just for the record. That's the exact response I would have given him. Also, I love Mike's comment where he said he got so mad that he had to make up a word, because I did have to Google it. But, man, I don't know. I've never thought in a bazillion years if someone asked me to come onto a podcast that they were going to pay me. Like, never did that even cross my mind. Also, I mean, good for him for doing an hour of work. I know what the show sheet's going to be, and I give Randy like 6 minutes of my time before the show starts. I did ask him today if it was going to be the same format, even though Shane was here, and he said, "Yes, Jerry. Yes, it is." So that's the extent of mine. So good on this guy. At least he puts in more of a grind than I do.
I mean, here's the thing. I want to share a comment from the YouTube chats if you're watching. It's from Mike Kinney. And this really makes me feel good about it. I have gained half of my podcast collection from guests coming on to shows that I listen to. So obviously he listens to this one. I should leave his comment up. It hides half of Jerry's face. It's not a bad idea. But I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, I think our most, I'll say famous, most popular guest we've ever had on was probably Jason from the Fantasy Footballers. Maybe Heath Cummings from CBS Sports. Those guys could not have been nicer. Those guys could not have been more professional, just like Shane. And Shane keeps coming back. And here's the really neat underside of this. I had known of Nick Whalen for a long time. Again, another guy that I super trust with Devi and college prospects. Not only did Nick come on the show, but Nick and I have ended up developing a relationship.
Hey now.
Not that type of relationship, but we've developed a friendship. He and I went and did a Spartan race together. He's a great guy. We're friends. My wife calls him my internet friend. It's just weird. You're missing out so much because if you look at this strictly as a cash venture, and I'm all about sponsors, and I'm all about making this hobby or thing worth your time, I was flabbergasted. So I do want to do this because it's a great segue. This segment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. I can take my Manscaped trimmer and I can go shave Dan because he's the biggest dick I know. We'll just trim you right down, Dan. We'll clean you right up over at manscaped.com. And again, here's an even better referral than Dan.
Ritualistically shaved my testicles. There really is nothing like a shorn scrotum. It's breathtaking. I suggest you try it.
I echo those sentiments. Go to manscaped.com, use promo code ZONE. You'll get free shipping. You'll save 20%. And your junk will look better. This is good for bachelors. This is good for married fellas. This is good for people in a relationship. The last thing you want to do is drop trowel and just look unkept. Trust me, you'll like it. Go to manscaped.com, promo code ZONE, save 20%, and make your junk look better. All right, don't forget your back door while you're at it. That area is also a mess as well.
All right, there's the line.
All right, there we go. So we're going to move into players we're impressed and distressed by. Now, we do have our very own Shane. He's going to have a guy. So, Shane, I'm going to give you the first crack. Who is a player through either week 2 or through the season to date that has impressed you? Maybe you're not buying yet, but you're keeping an eye on because you're feeling good about what you've seen to date.
So I've been ranking receivers this week for FanBall. So mine's definitely receiver focused as I've been looking into a bunch of them. But I'll say my impressed for the season so far has been Debo Samuel, the receiver for the 49ers. When the whole Brandon Ayuk stuff blew up and he's benched and whatever, the fact that it was him and not Debo Samuel, who a lot of people are putting well behind him, I think is very telling. And the Shanahan offense continues to have scripted plays for Debo Samuel. So I feel like he has this really nice floor where they're going to have 4 or 5 plays. They're going to toss him, throw him the ball. He's going to catch a handful of those, plus whatever he's starting to do, getting down the field, doing some things down the field. And I love him after the catch. I think he makes people miss. So I don't know if I'm quite buying, maybe you want to see a down week or two and get that value down a little bit. But I think there are people out there who maybe still aren't high enough. If this is the way this season's going to go with Garoppolo, imagine the future with Lance. I think Debo Samuel's going to be, he's definitely impressed me, and I'm hoping to see more of it.
Now, we're not going to run a victory lap on Debo, but we weren't pro Debo, but we weren't pro Ayuk either. Jerry and I's take the entire time is like, we really want to see all 3 of these guys, Ayuk, Kittle, and Debo, on the field at the same time. And what's the usage pattern going to be? Because they're all extremely talented. We like all of them, but due to injuries between Kittle and Debo, we've never seen this offense in its entirety the way that it's going. So for me, I like Debo. I have more Debo than Ayuk. The one redraft league that in the Dynasty WarZone patron tag team division, me and my co-owner Nathan, we're like, what the hell? We're not really Ayuk guys. Let's roll the dice on him as our wide receiver too. and when your wide receiver one's Allen Robinson. Been a slow start to the season for me and Nathan. So, Jerry, what are your thoughts on Debo from what you've seen so far?
Well, I watched him kick the hell out of the Detroit Lions, so I saw a whole lot of that. Yeah, that was something. I didn't see anything of this Ayuk stuff going on. Debo's a guy that I've always liked. He kicked the hell out of Michigan in a bowl game when he was in college, so that's always going to be a soft spot in my heart for him. So I like it, and I'm not really an Ayuk guy. Yeah, he impressed me far more than I thought he was going to coming out, but I have always sort of been Team Debo in that aspect. So it's good to see that he's been, finally producing like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I'm a big Debo guy. Jerry, and before I do this, just for the listener, so for the first about 3 or 4 weeks of the season, we're just going to give you the impressed and distressed. And then we're going to turn it into one buy and one sell. Because right now, some of these guys, you've been listening to the show for years, or if you're new, welcome aboard again. I'm a Cooper Kupp guy. I'm a Terry McLaurin guy. I don't need to tell you that Cooper Kupp and Terry McLaurin are good at football and worth rostering in Dynasty. I just want to monitor guys like Debo. What's his value going to be? And that's what this segment's going to turn into. Right now, we're about a couple of more weeks in the monitoring phase. Jerry, who are you monitoring? Who's impressed you? You're not sure if you're buying yet, but you're in.
It's funny because this is a guy that I might have one share across all of my leagues. I hated the situation when he was drafted to it. I thought he was overdrafted, and I thought it was a piss poor situation. It's Hollywood Brown. The dude has done well. I would love to shit on him like everybody else seems to do. 6 catches each game, at least, I think 70 yards or close to it. He scored. I mean, he's consistent. And if he's going to keep doing that, that's Antonio Brown, his cousin-esque sort of numbers. That sort of consistency. That was his floor when he first started to pop in whenever the hell that was, 2014 or something, when he was getting at least 5 receptions every game. If Hollywood can do that, and with Rashad Bateman on the bench and Mark Andrews sort of being up and down, the running game's iffy, it could easily happen. So Hollywood is definitely somebody that could see a big spike. It's something I did not really see coming because I'm not a huge believer in Lamar as a passer, but it has been nice. I will say that for the one share that I do have.
Shane, what are your thoughts on Hollywood? I know we all liked him coming out of college. I know I really liked him. I didn't love the landing spot. The usage in the first 2 weeks have been great.
I agree. He was a guy that I did like coming in to the NFL, and then it was up and down, the injuries. But if you go back to the end of last year, he was doing this as well. So that's why it feels like not a mirage, right? It's just it's 2 weeks. But it was ending last season. We started to see this pick up when I think he had that one game where he got 0 points, and everyone's like, he's dead. I think I traded Antonio Brown for Marquise Brown and a pick, and then boom, from then on, it was touchdown almost every game, 6 catches. Yeah, I think until we see Rashad Bateman come back and see if that offense changes a little bit, that's my one fear. I think I'm definitely in, and he's a flex play every week.
I agree. No, so for those that are, again, new to the show, I do this every week for our patrons. Now, instead of just doing one of each, a distressed and an impressed, I do 5 of each, and then I do the one on the podcast. So we do a lot more behind the scenes. But yeah, Marquise Brown, I don't know that Jerry actually listened to the Patreon pod. He doesn't listen to this one, so I would be surprised if he did. But Marquise Brown was on the list.
It's because I hate my own voice. That's why I can't listen to this one.
That's how you got to get better, buddy. You got to get better. No, I agree. Because I wrote him down. He was 6 for 113 against the Chiefs and 6 for 69 in Week 1 against the Raiders. And I think his role is more secure than Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews was on my depressed list on the Patreon show last night because I think Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman are going to be fighting for a lot of the targets in the same area, whereas Marquise Brown's role is really more his role. No one else really kind of does what he does in that offense, so it's going to be on limited touches, but he's an explosive dude. I love him. Now, my guy is not going to surprise anybody, so I'm not giving away a bunch. My guy is Sam Darnold. I don't want to go this far yet.
But the cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure he's quite to that point after 2 games against the Jets and against the Saints. But the thing that's impressed me the most about my boy Sam Darnold is that for a guy coming into the season with a career completion percentage number of sub 60, for him to be at 68.5% right now is pretty impressive. And it speaks volumes to what happens when you're put in a situation with talented people around you, with talented leadership. And I believe it was Pro Football Focus, it may have been NFL on ESPN. He made a throw to Zylstra. Shane, when I throw this to you in a second, you can tell us who the hell this Zylstra or I like who the blue hell is that was at our patron chat on Sunday. It was like, who the hell is this Zylstra guy? Should I pick him up? I'm like, I don't know. I'll find out. But it was like he made a throw to him. He was rolling to his right. He stops on a dime and throws an absolute strike to this guy. So through 2 games, I can't buy any more Sam Darnold because I have it all in every league that I'm in. Jerry will attest. But I've been very impressed with the Panthers and this offense. And remember, I know the Saints were down. They were down Marcus Davenport, Marshawn Lattimore, one of their better safeties. He has like the hyphenated last name. I'm drawing a blank. But I've been impressed. And he's been doing well. So, Shane, you, with your level of insane knowledge of college football, you probably known about Sam Darnold since his junior year in high school. What have you seen in the last 2 weeks? Maybe it's just been highlights. Maybe you haven't seen every single snap. But what have been your takeaways in the first 2 weeks of Darnold in the Panther blue?
I think it's comfortability in this offense. I feel like Joe Brady's offense is matched to him. I think it's one of Brady's strengths is that we know like he has this offense, but it's not locked in. Like this is what you have to do. I think he took what Sam Darnold does well, why he was a high draft pick, good ball placement, able to kind of get the ball out fairly quickly and built the offense around that a little bit. So when you have a pass to Brandon Zylstra out of Concordia, a classic prospect that went undrafted.
In Ann Arbor?
I knew you would know that. I knew you would know exactly who that dude was.
Concordia College, and I think it's in Minnesota, maybe. I feel like it's wrong.
There's one right down the road from me.
All those tiny. I could be wrong, so you might be right. Maybe it's Michigan, but but I think it is like having some good early game scripts where he can get the ball quickly, doesn't have to make a ton of reads, and then it seemed like I watched more of the Saints game. It seemed like as he got more comfortable as the game went on, they kind of let him do more and go through more progressions and have a little bit more reads. I really thought he seemed to be able to read the defense pre-snap better than I ever saw in the Jets. Like it seemed like he didn't know what he was doing. So I think the offense is really molded to him, let him do what he does well. And that's what you should do with every quarterback, right? Like, I mean, that's what should be happening in the NFL and every team.
I'm not prepared to talk about Jalen Hurts, but and we've bagged on the Eagles a bunch. But that really feels what Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen have done in Philadelphia. The coaches that coach in this, you got to fit in my system. And Matt Nagy feels like he coaches that way to me. It feels like Matt Nagy I have a system, I run my system, whether it's Dalton or soon to be Justin Fields, this is my system. But progressive coaches, they don't look at what their quarterback can, what their system is. It's what can their quarterback do? And they mold the system around them. It's been part of the resurgence of Josh Allen. Lamar. Now, Josh Allen, Lamar, they work their ass off, in fairness, and I think Sam Darnold probably has too. But man, when you're invested in these guys from a dynasty perspective, it's not a big part of the puzzle, but who coaches them is a big part of the puzzle. At least it is for me. So, Jerry, we've talked about the good, so you know what happens if it's not good. Give me the guy that's got you a little nervous. He's got you a little distressed.
It's not distress. I got this guy everywhere. All offseason, I talked about how he was a great value. All offseason, I tried to acquire him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, man. Come on, man.
Well, hold on. I want to call a timeout. Did you see Theo at the OG Fantasy? Buddy of ours from our high stakes league, Theo, he posted that 20-second video from The Sopranos as he talked about them being Clyde Edwards-Helaire GMs. If you haven't seen it, go find Theo, the OG Fantasy, and it was from Monday the 20th. Find that tweet. It is pure gold. Sorry, Jerry.
It's okay. You don't have to apologize. You're not Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's been so bad. And like he's getting the touches, so you're excited. Like he got 14. I think he got like 17 week 1. He got no receptions last week. He fumbled. I think he got like 1 point or 2 points or something because of the fumbles. It's been so gross. And I hate it with everything in me. I don't even know what to say about it because it just sucks because he's getting some of the opportunity. He's just not doing what you want. And he profiled as a pass catching back out of LSU, and you're just not seeing it. Like it sucks. And it's always going to be a Patrick Mahomes offense. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts around that. It just sucks. You wanted to see, you've seen it with Andy Reid for so long. Everybody he's had. Crumb bum shoe clerks, it didn't matter. He made them RB1s, and they were great, and you started them, and they were plug and play. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as a first-round draft capital, could play 3 downs, and we're not getting it. And I bought into it. And that's the thing that sucks worse. It'd be one thing if it was like, if Cam Akers were to struggle. I wasn't a huge Cam Akers guy, so I wouldn't be as upset. I liked Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I bought in with the draft capital. I bought in with Kansas City, and he's farting directly into my face, and it's horrible, and I hate every second of it. I know you're a Clyde guy. He's farting in your face too, man.
I am, but here's the thing. I'm looking
He's
at
going to
this.
talk me off a ledge here.
No, I'm not. But just like a couple of years ago, maybe it was last year. Yeah, it was last year. Jonathan Taylor. Everybody was losing their wig because Jonathan Taylor was moving slow. And I understand we should be seeing more. And I'm prepared for this because this was another one of the 5 guys I covered on last night's Patreon podcast, is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm hoping that Andy Reid realizes that they need to have some sustainable drives to give that defense a break. Because it's cool that you can score with the flick of a Patrick Mahomes wrist and, Tyreek Hill takes 175 yards. But sometimes to give your defense a break against a really good offense like a Baltimore, like a Buffalo, sometimes you need to slow it down a little bit, especially before a half, and get that 10-play, 12-play, 14-play drive. And I'm hoping that there's some meeting of the coaches that says, hey, we've really got to commit to the run a little bit more. Again, it's great when you can take advantage of it, but I think obviously the Patrick Mahomes horrible interception didn't help. But that defense looked gassed in the second half. They look absolutely shocked because it felt like I didn't look at a drive-by-drive series. It literally looked like everything was either like a quick score, like the Kelsey score or the Hardman score, or it was like a 3-and-out. So the defensive time to get their wind really wasn't there. So I'm hoping that, it was just the game plan and they do a little bit something different. But yeah, we may be talking about Clyde as a sell here in a couple of weeks. Shane, give us your thought on Clyde. You had a very good finger on the pulse of the 2020 rookie running back class, so I would love to have you revisit what you thought then and then what you've seen these first 2 weeks.
I think it's a little bit of everyone's fault. So I mean, I agree with Memphis. Like, hey, you got to run a little bit more. Right, week 1 last year of CH's rookie season, we saw that. I was like, oh, this guy's going to be good. And then he gets stuffed the goal line 3 times. Like, oh, I don't know. But I think it is a problem with having Patrick Mahomes. I feel like they're using Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a power back, and that's like the opposite of what he was, right? He's a pass catcher. He's going to be electric in space, and they're not getting him into space. And I think on his end, he has this weird thing that I can't say I've seen from too many running backs where like he seems to run into contact. Like he's like goes toward the defender instead of trying to get away from the defender. And it's straight, it's something like I feel like Walter Payton would do. And like CH isn't Walter Payton, it's not going to work. So I do think there's some fundamental issues that he has too. So I hope they find a way to use him. But I think what he was drafted to be Brian Westbrook, and it's like, you're not running any running back as Brian Westbrook on this offense with Patrick Mahomes. Like, Donovan McNabb is going to check it down. And Mahomes isn't, and that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people miss. It's just like, well, Andy Reid, but different quarterbacks are dictating how this plays out. Patrick Mahomes is I don't want to say he's more athletic. I mean, you would know better than I, more athletic than Donovan McNabb. He was pretty athletic back there. But Patrick Mahomes seems to have no interest in checking the ball down. He's going to extend the play. He's going to let Tyreek Hill or McCole Hardman uncover, and then he's going to whip it out into space. So, all right, Shane, give us the guy you're distressed about after 2 weeks. You're not burning the ships, but you're concerned.
I'm not burning the ships. This is a big one though, and that's Najee Harris, running back for Pittsburgh. I'm worried about him. It's not just the offensive line is bad. He's a player. I feel like he's that player that I'm going to be a hypocrite on either way. Like, because I recognize the talent, but I was never like into like this is the next stud running back. I never loved that class so much. So it's like if he's good, I could be like, wow, he was my RB1, right? But if he's not good, I'm like, wow, I was never fully in. And I think the stiff arm and the highlights like look fine. He's getting 90+% of the snaps. Everything he should be smashing. He should be a top 5 running back, even with a bad offensive line. And the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger, just he's not that interested in running that much. And Najee can't create his own, his own lanes. He's a guy who I think at Alabama, when he's older than every other defensive player, he could do that. And I think now in the NFL, when there is contact in the backfield, he's just not explosive enough to get back up to that full speed and get through the line and create yardage when he's hit in the backfield or hit at 1 yard. And I think that's kind of propping up here. So I have some fear because I don't know if the Steelers' offensive line in front is going to get better in this year, next year, 3 years, and I think we have a short shelf life on a player with the tread on his tires that Najee has. Like, I need him for 5 years on my dynasty team, and after that, I'm not counting on him much. We can't waste a year. We can't waste 2 years. It's just not going to happen. So I'm not selling him. I'm not throwing him away, but I'm a little distressed on what's going to happen.
I'll be honest. I'm
think
distressed.
That's fair too.
Go ahead, Jerry. Take off.
Because I was in on it, right? As soon as he was Philadelphia, I thought, Jerry, just hook, line, and sinker. Fell right for the Le'Veon Bell in Philadelphia sort of thing that Najee was going to be. And what does he have, like 40 yards rushing or something in both games? I mean, he had 5 receptions, which is good. That's something you want to see for a young guy. But I'm with Shane. I was in on it. I have quite a few Najee shares farting in my face too, man. That's the theme of this category. Is they're just farting right in my face.
Now Jerry's into that sort of thing. For me, I mean, again, he's a rookie. This offense is new under Matt Canada. I know his last name's Canada for sure. There's gonna be and maybe under I'm drawing a blank on the new DC in Las Vegas, but that defense has looked pretty good. Not great, but has looked pretty good through a couple of games against a couple of pretty good teams. And Buffalo's defense is no joke. Ask Tua and Miami, who just got pitched a shutout. I think there will be brighter days ahead for Najee. I do believe that the targets and the volume of this offense, my concern with Pittsburgh in general is that this defense is so good, you're going to see a lot of games like you saw in the Buffalo game, like you saw in the Raiders game, where there's going to be a lot of field goals and there's going to be a lot of 21-17 type scores. And that's going to suck. Because if the defense is good enough to keep even really good offenses like the Raiders, like the Bills in check, then it's going to be more of what we've seen the last 2 weeks. So those would be and I'm the guy who thought that Najee a year from now could be in your top 3 running backs in a startup. I'm not quite ready to say it's Jonathan Taylor 2.0 for me, but it's something to continue to monitor. I mentioned my guy earlier, and it's Mark Andrews. I know Mark Andrews in Dynasty, especially in tight end premium leagues, he has been a top, I think it's fair to say 4 to 6 tight end. I mean, there's the big 3. There's Kittle, Waller, and Kelsey. I know a lot of people like me and Jerry have moved Hawkinson into our 4. And then in that 5 range, it's been a lot of Andrews. And my concern is that in the last 2 games, the Ravens have scored 27 and 36 points, so 63 points in 2 games, and my man has walked away with a whopping, let's see, I got my notes right here, 5 targets per game. He caught 3 for 20 and 5 for 57. That's a problem. And when Rashad Bateman gets back and he works in those same quadrants of the field, That's a bigger problem. So for me, you're looking for that big Mark Andrews game. I'll go ahead and give you one. It's not week 3 or 4, but I don't give a shit. I write the show sheet. If you can get out of Mark Andrews, like if I could get a little something on top of Noah Fant, I'm going to hear you out. I'm going to hear you out because he's got Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy B's been fine. And if I can get out of Andrews and get Noah Fant in like a second and a tight end premium, sold American. Because I believe that in 2022, Denver's getting a QB upgrade. Could be Deshaun Watson, could be Aaron Rodgers, could be a lot of players. I don't think Teddy B's the long-term approach, but I've got big concerns about Mark Andrews. I had him coming into the season, and this was supposed to be his window. No Rashad Bateman, chance to operate. Shane, you're a Pittsburgh fan. I'm sure you're not disheartened to see the Ravens tight end struggling. But what are your thoughts on Andrews and what you've seen to date? And does the return of Bateman bother you?
I'm almost fully on board with you. I might go after Fant in some leagues that I have Andrews, and I think the offense is changing. I think it's evolving. I think it's why they took Rashad Bateman, right? They wanted to get to the boundaries a little bit more. It wasn't about the middle of the field and using the tight end and just run and throw to Mark Andrews anymore. So I'm a little bit scared. Like we know Andrews is talented, but if Bateman comes back, he's going to get targets. He's so, and we like you're talking about, Hollywood Brown's going to get his. So like, if Mark Andrews' targets go down, there's nothing left for him to have.
I'm going to take Noah Fant every single day, 8 days a week, straight up. I don't even need the second. I'll take Noah Fant.
Look at the amount of targets and where they're going. They're all going to Sutton and Fant right now. And when Judy gets back, it'll be a 3-way split. I mean, I'm not the biggest Teddy B guy in the world, but I think the name cachet of Mark Andrews. He was a Power 5 school guy, a notorious Power 5 school guy coming out of Oklahoma, attached to a stud quarterback we all like. There are going to be selling features of Mark Andrews in the not-too-distant future. So, all right, I'm going to get into the bread and butter while we brought the Devi genius that is Shane P. Hallam on in just a second and how it can help your Superflex roster. But just take a quick minute to tell you that segment is brought to you by the Patreon. Patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. That's where I do this each and every week. Right now, in season, I'm doing 5 guys, and then they're going to turn into 5 buys and sells each and every week for our patrons, as well as the group chat. We've got, and then it's splintered off. We've got a gambling group chat. We've got a college group chat. We've got the full-blown Dynasty group chat. You can be a member of 1, 2, 3, all of them. And it's all included over at patreon.com. I think it's the best patron in fantasy sports. Shane may have something to say otherwise. They run their own over at the Devi Marketplace, but I'm biased. It's true. But I want to thank the patrons. They keep the lights on here at the Dynasty WarZone and the DWZ Fantasy Football Network. If you're interested in what we do, you can DM me at DWZ Memphis, or you can just check out patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. So here we go. This is, obviously I just like to hang out with Shane. We've been in leagues together. He's a super smart guy. But the genesis of this conversation come from another friend of the show, Ray Garvin, at Ray GQ. If you're not familiar with Ray, get out from under that rock you're living under and go check out Ray GQ. He's a stud. And Ray is a fun follow on Saturdays if you don't have time to watch college football. Because Ray is out there tweeting, he's chopping it up, he's doing good stuff, and he is talking about these quarterbacks not being great. And so my thought is, I'll tell you what my thought was, then I want to hear about the rookies, or the soon-to-be rookies, I guess, from Shane, is that a lot of these guys aren't real threats. And I started getting flashbacks to the Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins class of 2019. And that made me think from a dynasty standpoint, a lot of us play Superflex. If you're a 1 QB player, you can take this in as well. But does that mean 2022 is going to be an extra year of Jared Goff? Does it mean you're going to get an extra year out of Daniel Jones? So Shane, first, tell us about this quarterback class. I spent a few minutes just talking about Spencer Rattler. I know there's Sam Howe. Let's just talk in general about the upcoming QBs that we should be talking about in 2022, because it was all Spencer Rattler for the longest time.
So I think the difference between 2022 and 2021 at this point last year, let's go back a year, was that we knew we had kind of had guys built in. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields were going to be high picks, even if they did not get any better. And honestly, I'm not sure if either one did. They were going to be high picks in the draft in terms of college. I don't know if they really got better. So we didn't have those guys this year. We came in with Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma, who was 5-star, top-end recruit. He has the physical tools. He can move around, but makes a lot of boneheaded decisions and did last year against really bad defenses. And he had to get better at that. So far, he hasn't gotten better at that. Sam Howe from North Carolina, who came in as a freshman and lit the world on fire for Mac Brown there in North Carolina, did really well last year. And then this year he's lost his top 2 receivers, Diami Brown, Daz Newsome, and his top 2 running backs, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. They're all gone. And week 1, he gets, they lose the game. He throws a ton of picks, and he's bounced back. But he just doesn't have that upside of a Justin Fields or Trey Lance, that you really want. And so that was kind of the fear. But what that also has done is opened the door for more quarterbacks who have that upside and have gotten better. And so I think that's where the disconnect is now. This class is not going to be 2021. It's not going to be 5 guys going in the first round. And so probably some of those journeymen are safe. But I think when you look at the next guys on the list, then you start to see players that, this guy could be a top 5 pick. Matt Corral from Mississippi is my number 1 quarterback in this class right now. And he's a player who lit up Alabama last year, had 2 awful games where he threw 5 interceptions in each of them. And it was, so that was really bad, Matt Corral. And then this year, been pretty easy competition so far. But you've seen the improvement of him, of making quick decisions, of reading the defense. He has a lightning quick release, and he's athletic and can move. And so now you're like, okay, now there's a door open past Rattler and Howe. We were kind of blinded by that. You have Malik Willis and Liberty, who went to Auburn, transferred to Liberty. There's a lot of talk of him in the offseason because he can run. He runs a 4.4.
He's a little guy, isn't he, Shane?
He's 6'1", but he's 215 pounds.
Okay.
So he'll probably come in 6 foot. Let's be honest.
Right.
So people are always a little bit taller on this sheet, but he's 215. So he has that kind of Kyler Murray attitude. He's come in. Corral and Willis actually will play each other later. So I think there is an opening for this class to be better than it looks right now. But it's not. We just don't have that built-in safety to say, we have 2 top 5 quarterbacks. Like, I don't know if we have any top 5 quarterbacks. We could have 2. We could have 3. We could have none. And that's the fear with this class, is when you just don't have that guy at the top that's definite. That's a problem. But, we saw like 2018 and 2019 and 2020. I'd say 18, 19 more so, that the depth was an issue, like you talked about Memphis in 2019. But Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray kind of came out of nowhere and solidified those classes a little bit more than we thought they would be. I think it's going to happen again. And so I think Jared Goff might not be so safe if the Lions keep losing.
Who have you seen where that would be sort of the case so far this year? I mean, I know we're only 3 games in, but is there anyone that sort of stands out as sort of they're showing signs that they could be that person?
I think Corral and Willis have that ability to go number 1 overall. I think teams could really buy into, now that kind of the height thing is gone. I feel like Kyler Murray's just blowing that up. That you don't have to be 6'2" anymore. You can be 6.5", but both these guys are. I think that really blows the lid off. So I think those 2 are guys that have that potential. And I still think Howe and Rattler. Just the physical tools of Rattler and the experience of, I feel like Hal's going to be like Daniel Jones, right? He's going to go too high because the old school football guys like him because he won for 3 years and whatever. But I think Rattler's physical talents, people could be impressed with enough. But I kind of think there's those 4. You'll hear other names like Carson Strong, but the guy can't move in the pocket to save his life, and I just don't think
that's the Nevada guy.
Yeah, his arm's great. But he's like a less athletic Drew Lock to me. where like it's great, but
That's not a good combination at all.
If you weren't watching on YouTube, you didn't get to see Randy's face right there. But
It was like,
not
wait a
good.
second. Athletics, all Drew Lock's got at a cannon, I guess, but
Yeah, like I think Strong has that cannon and like the arm talent. You're like, whoa. And then once there's pressure, he looks like he doesn't know what to do. He can't even sidestep. He can't even roll out. And so a lot of people like his arm, but I really think the top four to me feel like the guys that are going to be there.
So let me ask you this: you're an NFL GM. You're the Jerry. You have to set this one out, even though you're a Lions fan. Shane, you're the GM of the Lions. Are any of these guys? You have what, 2 firsts this year? You have 2 firsts next year from the Matt Stafford deal. Are you gonna be willing to invest one of those picks? I mean, Detroit's personal pick's going to be pretty high. Maybe the Rams, the way they're playing, they're probably going to be in the back quartile of the draft, somewhere between 25 and 32. Shut up, Jerry. Is that the kind of place where you could maybe invest that 25th, 26th, 27th pick?
I think that's probably what I would look to do, especially if they're not picking number 1 overall. If they're not going to get Corral or get the top guy, I think maybe using that late first and taking a player, but not being locked into that player either, especially with the picks next year. Like, I don't know, and maybe I have a different philosophy, but I feel like when you're picking a quarterback in the 20 to 50 range, I don't think you should be locked in like that's my future franchise guy. I think it's let's see what we have. And if he's not good, if he's Dwayne Haskins, like who wasn't good from day one, let's move on. You can criticize with the Cardinals taking Josh Rosen, but man, I mean, they were quick to get off of him, and look what's happening now. Like I'm fine with that. Let's take a guy that I like, but if he comes in and he's stupid, and he's not mature and he's not what we thought, like let's move on. And I think the Lions would have that flexibility to do that because they have all those picks.
As a person that does mock drafts, do you think that is a smart pick for the Detroit Lions to make? Yeah, let's say they have the first pick. Should they take one of these quarterbacks over Thibodeau or whoever else there is?
At this point, I say no. I think Matt Corral could get there for me to say, yeah, you should invest in this player. But I like the way the Lions are building the team, right? They worked on the offensive line. They worked on the interior of the defensive line. I think we saw both those things pay dividends against Green Bay. And I think it's why they've been in games. And I like building from the inside out. And so to me, I mean, I think Kayvon Thibodeau is the best, pass rusher, obviously since Chase Young that we've had. I would take him at 1 overall. And like I said, invest a 2nd round pick in a quarterback, and let's see what we got. And next year, let's be mediocre again, and then let's take our franchise guy in a potentially better class.
Well, let's take lazy cut and paste, copy and paste narrative, because that's what Dynasty podcasts do, right? Could the Lions, say the Rams finish like with the 27th overall pick? Could the Lions invest that pick in like a Malik Jackson, and then do the same thing with Jared Goff that the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson, who's turned out to be an absolute stud, and maybe start next year with Jared Goff, and then at some point transition? Because that's the one upside about using a late first on a quarterback versus a second, is that you have that 5th-year option on their contract, which was the whole reason why the Ravens did it. They took that gamble. It paid off. Would that maybe be something that you'd be willing to do with a late first if you were the Lions?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love that. I think for them, I think it's something that Washington should look into, right? I mean, if Taylor Heineke plays decently, I think they're a team that could do something similar. Like Malik Willis is there late in the first. Take him, develop him. He's going from Liberty to the NFL. Like, let him get acclimated and then build an offense around those talents and kind of let it happen. So I honestly think it's probably going to end up being the best approach. Like I said, maybe if you're picking first overall and we see Matt Corral light up Alabama and have this monster season and have developed like Joe Burrow did, like, all right, I'm in. But if that doesn't happen, I think spending that late first and letting your journeyman play is not a bad decision. We can debate that, I guess, in generality, but I think it's a good decision, especially for a team like Detroit, they're not looking to win that Super Bowl in 2022. So, but
or 2032, whichever.
someday, Jerry.
Maybe like 3032.
Yeah.
So, all right, I got one last question for you because I want to we love making this show about useful information for the Dynasty gamer. Would any of these quarterbacks make you hesitant if you were in a Superflex? Would it make you hesitant to try to acquire a Jared Goff, a Daniel Jones, a Sam Darnold? Would any of those guys coming out of college make you nervous? Because obviously you don't want to get a Daniel Jones for the rest of 2021. You want to get Daniel Jones for at least this year and next year. You would love to get more. You would love to see him continue to build off of his Week 2 PFF's Offensive Player of the Week award. So do any of these guys give you enough, Jerry, here, were you ready? Trepidation. Do they give you enough trepidation that you would maybe not want to make an acquisition of a Goff, a Jones, a Darnold, that type of QB in a Superflex?
I'll say this. I don't think the class as a whole gives me that trepidation to say, hey, this is a player who, Daniel Jones is definitely going to be gone. I don't think we can say that there's such a massive amount of quarterbacks in this class or guys that are going to step in and be franchise day one that a team's not going to have that competition. I think a Daniel Jones is probably better than, any quarterback the Giants are going to be able to draft where they are. So I think the Giants would be decent enough that they're not picking first or second or third as we've seen. But the other thing you have to consider too is, the Giants coaching staff and GM's probably not there anymore after this year. Whereas Detroit, it's going to be the same people. And so if Jared Goff plays as well as he has these 2 weeks, they're probably going to still be invested. And I think that's, Sam Darnold's, everyone's going to be there. He's fine. They invested picks in him. So I think it's about looking at those situations. And though I think Daniel Jones might be the most talented of that group, he might be the one that's most in danger because that turnover is going to happen and people are going to want their guy. So I think that's what I kind of look at, right? The situations that we've seen where rookies have not started, from day one, 2 out of the 3 that did were new coaching staffs, and the 2 that didn't were the same coaching staffs and GMs that have been there. So Jimmy Garoppolo and Andy Dalton, the guy they signed, they're starting. So I think when you have some consistency, it's easier to look long-term and say, hey, we're going to keep this player. So I would take advantage of people that are scared that Jared Goff's going to just be, one and out of the league or whatever. These guys will find their ways to getting some playing time and still being, good for you on your dynasty team. And you could probably still get them super duper cheap.
Nobody wants to get Trubisky. So if you can invest in some of these guys cheap, now's the time, because we're feeling like they're 2-year assets. Because even if these rookies come in, they're probably going to have to play their way into a roster. So that's why we had him on. We wanted to talk strategy. We do owe you just a little bit, so I'm going to go around the horn. Shane, I'm going to give it to you. If you're a dynasty, no, actually, you know what? I'm going to give this to Jerry. It's the Jerry special. If Jerry was going to release a rap album tomorrow, it would be entitled The Productive Struggle. Jerry, if you're on a rebuilding dynasty roster, if you're the GM of that, what are you doing right now? Hopefully you're 0-2. What kind of moves are you making?
I think now is when you can go for the struggling asset. If you have sort of underselling someone like Derrick Henry, he's been an absolute just tank. Derrick Henry is just going to do Derrick Henry things, but he's not going to help you if you have a rebuilding roster. So should you still have him, this is one of those situations where I'm trying to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a first, or Najee, or Saquon Barkley maybe, who's struggling a little bit. I'm definitely going after guys that are struggling. Definitely not Jamar Chase anymore. I would have loved to have said Jamar Chase 2 weeks ago, but that motherfucker's just been going bananas. So good for him. Definitely struggling assets that are, on the younger side, sort of flipping your older guys that may be a little bit productive, the Alvin Kamaras, the Ezekiel Elliott's, the Derrick Henrys, they're gonna help somebody win a championship. You're not winning the championship, so I'm not doing that. Go for the struggle. Embrace it a little bit. Allen Robinson, he's a little bit on the older side, but he's still a wide receiver. He's still going to help you by the time you're going to need him. Even if he's your wide receiver 3 by then, that's going to be just fine. So definitely. Also, shout out to Steve Austin. Steve Austin, that's awesome. They DM'd me about, because I went on a giant rant about my rebuild strategies last week, and they said, hey, check it out. Let me see what they got. They're better at it than me, so they should have their own podcast about it. But that's what I would say. Definitely embrace the struggle. You are trying to lose. Trevor Lawrence is a great buy right now because he has been absolute dog crap if you're trying to win in a Superflex league. He's still young. He's still learning. Give him some time. He's the perfect asset to buy, and he's probably cheaper than he has been since.
Or may ever will be.
Or may ever will be. Like Shane's been writing about Trevor Lawrence since 1998, and this is the cheapest he's ever been right this second. So
since he was born,
that's a big one. Yes,
straight out the crib, Shane wrote him up. Now, Shane, if you're in the middle, you came into the season, you had some good players, a mix of veterans and young guys, and you're 1-1. You're still unsure. Maybe you're 0-2. How are you proceeding? Are you just going to pull the ripcord? Is it roster dependent? What are your thoughts if you're in the middle right now?
I think it's always a little bit roster dependent. But I think what I generally try to do when I'm in the middle is move pieces for pieces that are close in value, and then get a little extra on top for the future. And that way you're not losing too much on your roster. I'm not going down. But I can trade, a wide receiver 2 for another wide receiver 2 and a 3rd round pick. And then now I have another asset. My line this year is going to be the 2022 NFL draft is the largest draft in NFL draft history by far. Over 1,500, probably hit 2,000 players. So that means those 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks in your rookie drafts are going to be a lot more valuable than 2021 was the smallest draft in NFL draft history. So if I'm a middling team where, especially if like depth is an issue, when those bye weeks start hitting, like you're going to lose. And it's like, I'm not going to win a title here. Then that's when I'm moving, I can move, a T Higgins for, and an Allen Robinson and a 3rd, or I can move some players that are good young assets that teams are really going to like, and I can move for a player that's still going to be good for the next 2-3 years and get another pick to build my depth next year. I think it's good. And the other thing I look for is some of these rookies that are like Jerry kind of talking about Trevor Lawrence, that are slow out the gate, guys like Elijah Moore and Michael Carter, because the Jets just had 2 tough opponents with a rookie quarterback. I think you can get those guys now a little bit cheaper than you would have had to spend for them in the rookie draft, and get a win that way too.
I love it. I see. This is why you bring on great guests like Shane P. Hallam, talking about the largest draft, like from an entrant standpoint in NFL history. Those teams are really going to be able to pick and choose. It's going to be a great UDFA class, and there's going to be a lot to choose from. So if there's every year, like this makes total sense. 3rds, 4ths, 5ths last year, slim pickings. The talent got real thin real quick. Man, Jerry, are you writing that down? Is that a writer downer? Okay, good.
Yes, I am. I have to mute myself when I write because I click too much when I write. But yes, I am.
Because that's good stuff. Because I'm the guy who always gets a 3rd thrown in on every deal. Jerry will attest.
Absolutely, he always takes my damn 3rds.
That's going to pay. That's going to pay huge dividends for me. If I'm a contender and maybe I drafted a Zach Wilson in the rookie draft this past year, I'm going to go look to try to get quarterbacks in a super flex like Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins. Dynasty Twitter and Dynasty podcast in general hate these guys. You think they owed them money the way that they worked, but I went through their roster cards or their weekly scorecards last year. These guys consistently, they both had a stinker, like 1 or 2. I know Carr got injured in the game against Miami last year, but that was the Chargers actually. But they these guys are consistently putting up 18, 20, 22 fantasy points a week. And if you're a contender, both these guys play in domes. They play in divisions where you're going to have to score points. It just go after players that Dynasty Twitter and Dynasty Podcast hate. Do I want to give up a young quarterback in the future? I don't know. I don't know what Zach Wilson's going to be, but you know what? I know what Kirk Cousins is. He's 22 points a game. He's throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. At some point, if we're lucky, he may get Irv Smith back. I know his offensive line should be getting better. He's going to play the Packers twice. He's going to be in shootouts with the Lions twice. Sometimes you got to go out as a contender. You don't want to give away the farm. You don't want to give away the really, really high. You don't want to give up Rashad Bateman. You don't want to give up Trevor Lawrence for one of these guys. But if I could move, like I said, like a Zach Wilson and you can probably get plus. You can probably get a little something on top of it, even as bad as they're playing. So if I'm a contender, I want to get a guy that I know is going to put points in my roster. It's this really weird thing with Dynasty Twitter, and it just baffles my mind. They want to lose with a sexy name on their roster than to win with an ugly name in their starting lineup. I'm going to go win Dynasty championships with Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr as my QB2. And I love to have that huge upside play, as my QB3. That way, if you need like a big win and consistent or safe won't do it, I like to mix it up a little bit. But there you go. A little advice for the contender, the middler, and the rebuilder. Shane, tell us some more about all the goodness you have going on.
Check me out at draftcountdown.com. Bookmark it now for NFL draft season. If you're not into it yet, just save it. We'll be there. If you like podcasts, check out the Draft Countdown. We have a YouTube channel as well where we live stream Wednesday nights at the same time this show started, 9 p.m. Eastern. So you can check that out. And yeah, on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. Always happy to answer questions and have debates and give advice, whatever you want. So, and I appreciate you guys having me on. I always enjoy it and always enjoy cutting up with you and having a good time talking football.
You are a draft season must. 2 years ago, like literally you and I recorded the night the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. We started talking rookies that very night. We usually have you on 1 to 2 times in the off season, but it's like, I heard this comment from Ray, and I was like, I'm going to get my guy. I'm going to get Shane P. I want to talk about QBs. Thank you for some great advice. Thank you for helping us existing Dynasty GMs, especially in our Superflex leagues, about how to, feel a little bit better about the Goffs, again, the Darnolds, the Daniel Joneses, because those are QB2s and QB3s with upside. Those are very important to have if you play a lot of Superflex. Jerry, what do you have for these good people before we get out of here?
All right. 2 things. I got one comment and then I got one question for Shane. One is subscribe to their Patreon. It's good stuff. A lot of the WarZone Patreons are already in that chat. It's a good chat. They answer your questions on the podcast too. And mine was, who would you drink a beer with historically, and who would you punch in the face? Shane would drink a beer with FDR, which is a good one. That's obviously a good answer. I would tell you who he would punch in the face, but most people wouldn't know it, so I'm not going to. The question, though, Shane, is should Michigan State build a statue of Kenneth Walker now, or should we wait later on? And also, if you could just talk about Kenneth Walker, because he wears green and white, and he has looked like an absolute animal. Should I be drafting him next year is what I'm going to say. Do you think it's going to translate?
I do think it's going to translate. I think Kane and I spent a good quarter of our last Heavy Marketplace podcast that's coming out this week on Kenneth Walker. So you'll get your fill. Kane's probably still a little higher on him. I'm still waiting. I want a little bit more Big Ten session, but I mean, we're looking for that next Javonte Williams. And I mean, Kenneth Walker did to Miami what Javonte Williams did to Miami. Like he just did the same thing and was as good. And it wouldn't surprise me if he becomes a top 50 pick with the way he can break tackles and the acceleration he has. So a Michigan State guy might be taking these rookie drafts. That's kind of new.
Yeah, and that means I'll overdraft him, unfortunately.
It's what you do, Jerry. You are a man of reputation. Well, listen, guys, first of all, before we sign off, I want to thank Helsing Unit, Andrew, Bui, and everybody who contributed so much to tonight's YouTube chat. A lot of fun interacting with you guys. I'm trying to pay attention to Shane, but I'm also trying to interact with our listeners who are supporting us live on YouTube. Thank you so much for the support. It means a ton. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Ryland X from last week. He noticed that we took his review. We made a couple of adjustments. He went in and changed his one star. I didn't expect him to change it from a 1 star to a 5 star. It was very kind of him to do, but we just want to make the show better. And you know what? Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And, we were having this conversation, we're always going to have a pro wrestling or two reference. That's just what I'm going to do. We're going to have pop culture references. That's part of this show. But sometimes too much can be too much. So thank you for contributing. And if you want to contribute, go over to iTunes, go to Spotify, leave us a 5-star, leave us a 1 star. Hell, we're just trying to get better. And then go to Dynasty Warzone on YouTube, subscribe, turn notifications on. You won't miss the podcast. You'll get it a day early. You'll get the waiver wire sniping. You'll get prop bets. You'll get the alert that football Sunday school is going on. And we've not missed a question yet. So if you need a question answered on a Sunday for a start sit, you know where to find us. I'm going to play the Hate Brand Goods commercial. You can save money by using promo code Memphis. It's jogger season. If you're into joggers, I love mine. Go over there, check out the premium joggers. I recommend the black, not the blue. I can pull off the blue hat if you're watching live on YouTube. I can't pull off a Smurf blue joggers. It just looks weird on an old dude like me. But thank you to Manscaped and the Patron and Hate Brand Goods and everyone that sponsors us. Shane, thanks again, man. You look great. Thanks for tuning in. Love the new podcast space. A little bit different.
Yeah, we're trying to
church. We're all trying to church
better.
it up a little bit. It was different when we were just podcasts. You could you could podcast anywhere, but now everything's on YouTube. You got to have it on YouTube. So, thank you again. Thanks for jumping on, Jerry. Until next time, and on behalf of Jerry, Shane, and myself, here at the Dynasty Warzone, we're just trying to make the world a better place for fantasy football. We'll be back here tomorrow night talking gambling with Dr. Kyle. But until then, have a good week, guys. We'll talk to you.
Yeah.